but they overlooked his gay disclosure in relation to political implication. This is my complaint about the mainstream writing. This is where my criticism comes in, that I will push him back, I will pull him back into activism, considering his kind of radical speech act, what I mentioned about earlier. Where art critical formalism historicized his value, worth, and contribution in terms of his purely art historical worth, purely art historical formal values. The question is whether his sexuality was merely, so the argument usually given is that why are you talking about his sexuality? First see him as an artist. First see him as an artist, you know, as if the artist has nothing to do with his identity as a sexuality. Whether his sexuality was merely one of the aspects of his life is a question. Is his sexuality just merely an aspect of his life? Or could it be thought from other facets of his life? Or was it a crucially determining factor? Was his sexuality a very determining factor? चाय अभी नहीं पिएंगे, थोड़ी देर के बाद, लेक्चर होने के बाद पिएंगे. Thank you. आप गरम रखिएगा चाय को. Was it a crucially determining factor that controlled most? So my question is that I argue that his sexuality is the very basis of it. This is my position. This is my argument. His sexuality is one of the basis of his art making that amounts to political assertion in public sphere. But that is how, the given problematic, this is an issue. I have presented to you the issue. Whether you argue for or against it is actually possible. I'm also talking about criticality in writing, right, in relation to those who are doing the workshop. Problematic becomes complex when writers consider activism or Rajneetik Sakriyata as a limiting framework. Many art historians consider activism as a limiting factor. That is why Ranjit Haskote considers that it is limiting that Khakhar be framed, I quote, within the generic confines of gay politics, and argues that critics who claim him exclusively for gay politics cage him in a limiting position. सब लोग फॉलो कर रहे हैं ना, ये समझ रहे हैं ना, तो आगे जाऊँ मैं. One of the attitudes of the homophobe, that's another word that I am introducing you. We have already discussed it in the workshop. That homophobe is somebody who has a fear for no reason. Like how the hijra comes close to us, we feel a little shaky, right? Right? For no reason. He's not going to steal you, or she's not going to kiss you, she's not going to take away anything from you. But they want to terrify you, so you get terrified anyway. So, homophobe is not to see gay man's life and art as political matter, but as a private concern. So that's what one theme of this presentation is also. See sexuality as something private, don't take it to the political activism. The argument is that. So, however, for the gay political activism, the primary significance of gay Khakhar's life undoubtedly is that he is somebody who came out. That is the most important thing about for gay politics. So, Geeta Kapoor, again, who talks about she essentializes homosexuality. I also did not follow this word, padarthavad, but there's a essentialization, means there's a simplification. It's just a limiting thing, right, of the Indian middle class. Who is an Indian homosexual? There is no typical Indian homosexual. There is no characteristic Indian homosexual. But she is harping on that. Who hides himself, who is doing all kinds of slimy things, who is somewhat sick, who is somewhat, many descriptions of that kind he gives, you know. So that kind of awkwardness she celebrates, or he is supposed to be celebrating that awkwardness, tragic to sentimentalizing, informs the entire body of his work according to Gita Kapoor. So this is actually a reductive reading, what you call as limiting. नकारात्मक धारणा है ये नकारात्मक धारणा है, इसको ऐसा पढ़ना कि whereas Indian homosexual is not one monolith, it's not just one thing, it is different things in different contexts. गांव में अलग है, शहर में अलग है, कास्ट वाइज डिफरेंट है, इस जगह ऐसा है, साउथ में अलग है, नॉर्थ में अलग है, बहुत सारे उसमें बहुत सारे वैरायटी और अलग अलग टाइप के हैं. So what Haskote assigns as gay politics cage him in a limiting position is in fact a primary condition that helped. Actually, if you say that gay politics cage him and limit him, then you are actually missing out what he is trying to say, right? So it is a major step that he took in asserting the freedom from constraints imposed by heterosexist norms. Queerphobia is an embarrassment. It comes from an embarrassment that you don't want to accept it. It's somewhat cutting your nose, right? Naak katwata hai, right? So vichitra bhai, it's what I will call as a vichitra bhai, ek ajeeb sa bhai hota hai, fear hota hai. That should see an artist like Khakhar within. It is a fear that makes Bhupen Khakhar, that resists us to see Bhupen Khakhar within the political. Why should activist politics limit him? My question. You know, Khakhar became the first Indian artist to have disclosed his identity as a homosexual, and this is crucially absent in framing the significance of Khakhar, both by Kapoor as well as Haskote. Both of them actually overlooks his primary position as the first Indian artist to come out in public and take a role of an activist. Although both the writers engage with his private sexuality, I call it private sexuality, in terms of description and interpretation of his painting. They generally kind of slur over it. They will not go into the details of it. So same kind of curatorial strategies also came up in representing Bhupen Khakhar, like two important National Gallery of Modern Art exhibitions where Bhupen's work has been mistreated, in Delhi 97 and Mumbai retrospective in 2003, where Gita Kapoor herself points out in this context that museums' act of censorship show the intention of providing a conservative, consensus-driven view rather than highlighting the challenges to status quo. Now she tries to appropriate Bhupen Khakhar and say that he stood for all that against status quo, against the mainstream, but museums are actually doing the harm. So in these exhibitions, actually these works like Two Men in Banaras, Ram Bhakt Hanuman, picture taken on their 30th wedding anniversary, etc., are avoided. This was actually pointed out by Karin, which I mentioned yesterday, Art and Secularism book. Karin Schützwitz, which has a chapter on Bhupen Khakhar as well as on Ghulam Sheikh. So now I have a quote here. Barbara Smith says that homophobia or vichitrata ke bhaye. Homophobia is that illogical fear against homosexuality is usually the last oppression to be mentioned. हम कभी बात ही नहीं करते वो fear के बारे में. Last to be taken seriously, वो तो jocularly हो जाता है. ठीक है ना, बात उसको जोक करके फेंक देते हैं. Last to be taken seriously and last to go Other things like women discrimination of Dalits women may go, right? Government has policies, etc., to do equality, bring equality. But this is the last, it is extremely serious, sometimes to the point of fatal, in the sense that the fear of transgender often leads to killing of them. Many murders of these transgender women have happened all over. Homophobia is of itself a verifiable oppression, and in the heterosexist system, all non-heterosexuals are viewed as deviant, is the word, vichitra, prani, and are oppressed. They are oppressed. This oppression, actually, the gay man also, or gay, lesbian women also, transgender women also, internalizes, and they live their life like that, in an oppressed manner. So she argues that homophobia and abuse is a tacit attitude. It's not an obvious attitude. We have to go into analysis of it to understand it. Now, in contrast to Khakhar, the next generation of gay artists in India, like Jahangir Jani, Sunil Gupta, Belbir Krishna, etc., entered into the art world from identitarian activist premise. They were all activists. They were all part of activism before coming to galleries, showing their work. They came out as, in the beginning itself, so I'm not actually going into their works or their experiences, but that's another area of concern. Now, I will end the presentation with this few slides of privatizing public value. I title it Bhupen Khakhar, Spectatorship and Politics of Representing. How his friends, on one hand I mentioned about art historian, art writers taking him, but on the other hand, how his artist friends are reacting to his work. This is a work by Jatish Kallat, based on Bhupen's Old Man in Vasad has 5 penises. There is a tree there with five projections in this thing. So he calls it a tree with 5 penises. Unusual, very peculiar way of kind of trivializing it without having to go ask about what is Bhupen, this 5 penises doing there, right? So Jatish Kallat's this photograph is one of the memorials, one of the memorial exhibitions. This is another by Altaf, Bombay-based, no more, he is no more. This is man with 5 cigarettes. This is actually also a image derived from that particular painting has provoked a lot of such reactions. Now you know that, right? That it is a mockery. Now, this is some important exhibitions that happened. This is a Gallery Kamold, artist and his friends, Bhupen among friends. So you can see the Baroda gang there, Sudhir Patwardhan, Ghulam Mohammad Sheikh, Nalini Malani, Bhupen in the center, Jogan Chaudhary, and I think that is Vivan Sundaram. This is one of the pictures is Bhupen Khakhar and his boyfriend there. Some of the collages of their photographs. Now this first is actually Bad Drawing for Dost by Vivan Sundaram. He uses Bhupen's drawings and works on it. No, the stitching people, those who are concerned about stitching may think about it, about this particular work. He actually kind of mocks, or he actually kind of playfully kind of makes fun of it. Especially this 5 penises वाला image जो है, वो penis क्यों बनाया Bhupen? He was bottom. As if it is his responsibility, Vivan Sundaram's responsibility to declare to the world that why did he do 5 penises? He was not top, right? He was bottom. You don't know this terminology. I'm sure you don't know. Bottom are the people who plays the role of the female, and Tops are those who play the roller or the male. समझ में नहीं आया फिर भी नहीं थोड़ा थोड़ा आया because what he is showing in the middle of these 5 pennies is the R's. देख लो समझ रहे हैं ना क्या क्या प्ले कर रहा है क्या he is playing with this images and kind of creating that. Now there is another work, Bad Drawing for the Doors, Angel and Devil, talking about Bhupen's personality. So deriving from his images, he kind of तोड़ मरोड़ करके उसको दिखा रहा है. This is also Seva, again drawing for the doors. He is also reworking on the same this thing. Now this is a very important Atul Dodia show that was called as Sri Shankar Khakhar Prasanna. This is an exhibition catalog. This is the cover of that, and there was used to be a reference to this crocodile whose name is also there. It's a female's name. There is a reference to this crocodile in most of his narrative, Bhupen's narrative, so that's why it is there. That this is Khakhar socks, glass box with the velvet cushions on metal pedestal, woolen socks with candle. He calls the penny-shaped candle as candle, 2007. Now this is what I was referring to yesterday. The Ranchod, all these 5 people were Bhupen's boyfriends, right? I was referring to this in the present yesterday. So this is Sri Shankar. We saw Shankar Bhai Patel, right, in front of Red Fort. So he converts this man into advertising as having a shop of Formica, Sunmica, and 20 other top brands. Deliberately using this top there. And his portrait is being used, and Bhupen's painting is also shown in the this thing. So that is one of them. So all others have actually Sri Ranchod Bhai's something saloon or something like that. Hira Bhai's estate agent. So this kind of odd, very fictional kind of matter is brought in here. So, sorry. We have already perhaps it ended rather abruptly because tea is calling also. But quickly, if you want to ask something, some clarification questions, we can do that. As you like.